let's take a look at Paul McCartney's bass line on You Won't See Me from the Rubber Soul album in 1965. We can play this bass line by learning just a few patterns that we can repeat kind of in different places on the neck. Let's start with the verse of the song. It has a kind of 4-chord progression, and that progression is A major, B7, D major, A major. So we'll go through that cycle twice. On that progression, McCartney plays these arpeggio patterns that sound like this. So let's break down those patterns. It just begins with an ascending A major arpeggio, root, third, fifth, up to the root an octave higher. All of those patterns start like that. On the A major chord, the B7, same pattern, just up 2 frets. The D chord, same pattern, up another 3 frets, or we can go to play that same shape, that same pattern. And then McCartney varies how he sort of comes down from it. Sometimes he just sort of restarts the pattern, and we get the first 3 notes of that pattern again, root, third, fifth. Another option is root, third, fifth, root, and then we'll go fifth, third, fifth. The third option starts the same, root, third, fifth, root, and then he comes down a sort of pentatonic scale, 6th, 5th, 3rd. So that's an F sharp, an E, a C sharp. So he uses those 3 patterns pretty much interchangeably. In that first A major chord, he almost always plays option 1. When we come to the end of that chord progression and we play the A major again, he usually will play either option 2 or option 3. Any of those patterns will work anytime that A major chord comes up. You can kind of mix and match. For the B7 chord, he really only has 1 pattern that he's using. Same ascending, root, third, fifth, root, and then he comes down the scale, A, G sharp, F sharp. So we'll ascend in exactly the same way we were doing for the A major triad. We'll just do it 2 frets higher. But then we'll come back down the scale. So it sounds like this. For the D chord, we can play it in one of 2 positions. I tend to just go on up the neck. I'll just jump up another 3 frets to get that D on the 10th fret of the E string. The other place you can play it is the 5th fret of the A string. And we can play that same ascending major arpeggio, root, third, fifth, root. And then we can use kind of the same pattern as our option 2 from the A chord, 5th, 3rd, 5th. Or we can just come right down the scale, C sharp, B, A. So, and we can do that either here or here. If we want to simplify this, we can use option 2 of that A major chord at the beginning of the progression and at the end of the progression. We can also use that same pattern, that same shape for our D chord. So essentially we can learn one of those shapes and play it in 3 of the measures. That B7 chord, Really, we could play the same shape. That works there too, but that's one place where McCartney did something pretty consistently. He just came down that scale. If we choose option 2 for the A chord, we'll play our normal B7 pattern, and then we can choose option 2 for the D chord and then the A chord again, and it'll sound like this. If you get those other 2 patterns in there, option 1 and option 3, then you can change up your bass line even more. Kind of use those interchangeably, as McCartney was. So after we repeat that A, B7, D, A progression twice, the progression changes a little bit. We go from an A7 chord to a D major chord to a D minor chord back to A. On that A chord, he's usually using that option number 1. But options 2 or 3 would work. Then we'll go up to the D chord, and we can use that option 2 pattern again. We could also do the other option for our D chord, which is to come down the scale. McCartney does both at different points in the song. For the D minor chord, now this is kind of interesting. Most bass players would have changed the pattern to play a D minor arpeggio. McCartney doesn't. The last time that D minor appears in the song, he does play an F natural instead of an F sharp. That F natural is part of that D minor chord. F sharp makes it a major chord. But there are places in the song where even though the chord goes to a D minor, he's still playing a D major arpeggio. It's kind of unusual, but in the context of the song, it doesn't actually sound bad. But there are also a couple of times where he just avoids that F altogether. He just sustains that root for a quarter note instead of an eighth note, kind of skips that F and then continues on with the arpeggio. So that's maybe the safest thing to do there. Play that root for a quarter, fifth, root, and then come down the scale. And then we go back to the A major chord. And we can use option 2 or option 3. So those 4 bars together. Then we start moving towards the refrain of the song. We get another A major chord, and we can use any of those options. Or. And then we go to the B7. We use our B7 pattern again. Every time the song goes to B7, we're going to use that same pattern. And then we move into the refrain, which happens under the lyrics, "You Won't See Me," which is sort of D to an A chord. We begin with the first part of that D triad, root, third, fifth, and then we hit the fifth twice. And then we just step down the scale again. A, G sharp, F sharp, E. So that refrain. The refrain is also what opens the song. We just hear it once, and then we're right into the first verse. The only other part of this song is the bridge. The first bridge, McCartney is basically just playing roots. Second bridge becomes a little bit more varied, but if we play a quarter, quarter, eighth, eighth, quarter rhythm on every measure, just playing roots, we get a good feel for this bridge. So it would sound like this. If we want to get a little bit more into McCartney's feel on this bridge, we can scoop into some of the notes. He doesn't do it on every single note, maybe one note per measure. We get a little. So if we just scoop into maybe one of those notes per measure, get a little bit closer to McCartney's feel. That's all of the song. There are places where McCartney varies the line, he changes the line, embellishes the line, but we can learn a few patterns and be able to get through most of the song. Those patterns that McCartney's playing are also just great patterns to know as a bass player. That's not just a great bass line for this song. Variations of that bass line can be a good basis for grooves. With a slightly different articulation, it becomes almost a Motown groove. Mix and match those patterns, create your own interpretation of McCartney's bass line on this song. I've got a whole lot more McCartney bass content on my YouTube channel, so like and subscribe and check back often. Thanks.